Okay guys, so in the first part of this intro video, we did some introduction to JavaScript functions by trying to define them. I'm giving like how they are being used and some basic examples. So in this other video, we're going to try to elevate a little bit our understanding of functions in JavaScript. So let's start with functions declarations. Now we're just going to understand that with functions we can actually write functions, right? And we are going to go ahead and demonstrate it by writing a simple function that checks if a number is positive or not, right? So that's what we mean by functions declarations. So if we go here, we say example 2, okay, say example 2.js, and let me close that. Okay, not this. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, and we can just add a simple function here that's going to check by saying function. Okay, and we can close that, say is positive. Okay, and we're going to provide here a number. Now all what we're just going to do is just going to return to us using the return keyword. If the number is greater than 0, then the number is positive. And so we can console log here is positive with, let's say, -3, right? And it's supposed to show us the answer right away. Okay, so yeah, so this is it. So you can see here it's false, right? And if we try duplicating this and passing, for example, 2, then it becomes true. So that's that for function declarations, right? We're just writing the function and just declaring a body and everything. So next thing we're going to deal with function expressions. Now functions expressions is just more of like writing a function and storing it in a variable, right? So let me just go and explain that. Let's say um, function, or let me just say func expression. Okay, and here we can just, for example, just say const is even, and then we kind of like store a function in it in which we're going to say num, and now this function is just going to return the num if, not the num if, the modulo. Can I find where my percentage is on my keyboard? Okay, I think I found it. Yeah, so if it's that 2, okay, and if that is equals to 0, then it is even. If not, then it is odd, right? And if we could see add the strictly equals to, that equals to, or the strictly equals to doesn't really cause an issue on that. But you can later on try to find out why more equals to. Let's try it. Let's go with this, and we can duplicate this, or we can just go with what the tab 9 is trying to suggest to us. Okay, so here we just have a simple function expression, right? So this is what we call a function expression, whereby we write a function and we kind of like store it in a variable, and we can actually call that variable and pass it whatsoever we have to pass to it, right, as params for it to be able to execute. So this is what we call a function expression. Now we are going to continue, and then in the next part we're going to deal with arrow functions. Now arrow functions were kind of like introduced in ECMA 6, right? So it's kind of like a faster way of writing functions, right? Well, shorthand functions. Let me just say arrow functions. So it's kind of like a shorthand of writing functions, whereby you don't need to, when your function is short, you don't need to write it a whole call the, like for example call the funky word and the return. No, you can just simplify that. So let's say for example const multiply. Okay, let's multiply. Okay, if multiply, so now we're going to have certain a certain variable a, b, and then here in the arrow function, our return keyword is actually this arrow. This is what we call the return. This is our own when we write a return, when we're writing a return function or an arrow function, we use this. This is a symbol to say return. Like after you receive the parameters, it should like return that. So we're going to say a, b, right? So it's going to compute this calculation and then return that to us. So this is how JavaScript knows that this is an arrow function, right? So now we can just log, okay, and we call multiply, and we can say the 1 and let's say 8. That's 8, right? Or we could go with any one, and so that's 16. So that's what we call an arrow function. Now we're going to go to the next one, which is a little bit well, I wouldn't say complex, but I think to grab your head around it, you have to maybe try it on your own, right? So it's more of like, it's called an immediately invoked function expression. So let me just write it here: immediately invoked func expression, right? I won't continue writing that. So it's called an immediately invoked function expression, usually known as IIFE. Now I'm just going to give you a brief example. So we start by writing two parentheses like this. Okay, we start by writing two parentheses like this, and in the first parenthesis we define our function, right? So we can say, for example, here func, okay, function, and then we pass in here, let's say for example console, let's log this is FFE or I, and you see immediately as I'm typing it gets logged, right? Because this is an immediately invoked function. That means this parenthesis here is already calling the function as we are doing the changes here. You see, we see, so it's kind of like already calling the function, right? It constantly calls the function. That's why immediately as we do any change, we see the reflection here in our output here. So that's how we write an immediately invoked function expression. And mind you that we can either have a name for a function or not, but we always need to start with the func keyword. Okay, so I'm just going to write another another immediately invoked function expression that accepts a result or accept params. So we're going to say const result, okay, result, no, result, okay, and the same thing I'm just going to do as we did. So we have this and this again, and then here we define our function, right? So we can say function a comma b, and we return, let's just say it's just acts, right? And we return a plus b. Now with this case, to be able to pass in the parameters that we want, maybe we want to call the function, we can do it here, because this is where this is like this part here is like what is here, right? So if you kind of like understand that, that's how it kind of like works. And we can just log, okay, we can just log result, and when we log result we get 7, right? So that's how it works. So it's like this part immediately calls, the first parenthesis immediately calls what is inside here, right? Whatsoever is inside here is being called directly to work. Okay, so that's how the immediately invoked function expression works. So you'll get to maybe use that a lot or see that sometimes when you write your code. So we've also seen how we can use functions with parameters, right? Like the way we did the function greet in the example. Now we can also do something like function greetings again, but now in this case it's just going to accept a parameter which we can later on use, right? For example, we could just say it should be able to log. Okay, let's just say log greetings, and then we get the name. Now to be able to do this, we have something in JavaScript called backticks, right? Now if we do this and we try to console.log, if we try to console.log greetings, okay, by passing in, let's say, Bob, okay, we get undefined, right? Because it's actually printing this, right? So I don't even think I even need this again. I can just go ahead and call the function directly because it's already logged. So when we pass in Bob, then we see here that greetings, it's underscore name. Now to be able to see this Bob reflect here, we need to use what is called backticks, and the backticks are located, if you look at your keyboard, just beside just below the escape key, the key starting directly after 1, right? So you get it there on your keyboard. Now you see immediately as I do the backticks and the $sign curly brackets, we get now greetings Bob. If I say if I now put here Alice, okay, if I put here Alice, then now we get now greetings Alice. So that's how we work now with parameters, and the same thing we have seen with like trying to add, multiply numbers, right? So it's still the same way. Now we also have what we call default parameters, right? So in this function, for example, let me say function multiply, let's say multiply 2 or multiply again, okay. Now here we can have taking into parameters, and for this we say define b as 1, right? So now this is what we mean, and we can just return that. So this is what we mean. Now a is a parameter, but b is already a number that's it's already defined, right? So it already has a default value, right? Such that if we say console.log, or if we try to log that and we say multiply again, okay, if we say multiply again and we pass in only 2, for example, that's the which corresponds to a, then we get 2. Now if we said, for example, that this was 4, then we get 8, right? Now we can still say, for example, that okay, here we could instead pass 6, obviously giving us 12, right? So that means that we can either pass the value for b, or we can either leave it like that. Either ways, as long as we have given b a default value, it's going to compute, right? So that's that for all of this. We've seen how we use return statements by using the return keyword, okay. So whenever we do something, we need to return. If we don't want to return anything, then we can just leave it like this, right? Console.log, and everything is going to remain inside of it. So that's what the return keyword means. Like after you've done doing something, return me the value or give me back the value. So that's what the return keyword does. So now we also have one last one, but I'm not going to think I'm just going to be a little bit fast, okay. We also have one last one whereby we can say where we use spread operators in functions, right? So this is what we call the spread operator. Numbers, for example, and the spread operator is just those dot dot dot. So now it allows you to handle an indefinite number of arguments, right? So for example, here we can say return the numbers that reduce. So I'm just going to use what's here, okay. So reduce the total and then the number, and what we just do is that we start with the total plus the number, right? Now let me just assume, so this is our starter value. So if I can get the function definition from here, so this is our starting value, which is 0, right? Now this 0 is going to get into this total here. Now when we get the first number from these numbers, okay, we're going to add the number to plus the total and store it here again, right? And so on. We get the next number from the numbers, right? Because this is going to be considered as an array, right? And then we get a second number, we add it to the total, and so on and so forth. So if we get, for example, this and do this like this, we get a 10, right? So it starts with a 0 and it says 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 2, right, plus 3, okay, and then plus 10. So that's